It don't even sound. I want to put her on blast because she was telling me, she was saying to me that what I was asking for was crazy and they wasn't spending money like that. I'm talking about you got footage, you got clothing, you got. I was doing footage. I had pictures, all the stuff that I had, you know. You could figure out a way to pay a brother and stuff like that. And then I was telling her about some prices that I've already received, and I had the invoices to show it. And then she was calling me like I was lying. I'm like, yo, who do you think you talking to? You know what I'm saying? And she was talking about, there's no way nobody paid. Nobody what? I say, first of all you people come with these documentaries and stuff, the first thing you tell me, y'all tell these people out here that y'all don't pay, and y'all pay. If you can make a picture look like $10,000, $15,000, you know what I'm saying? You can sit here and tell me that you're gonna pay me for my time sitting right down here with y'all. You understand? So then, one thing led to another, and I was like, yo, all right, well then, F you, I spoke to 50, and then she said 50, and this is exact words that came out her mouth. 50 does not determine what goes in and go out of this documentary.
Jaguar Wright has publicly claimed that major material was removed from the recent high-profile documentary, alleging the omitted content was darker and more revealing than what audiences ultimately saw on streaming platforms. According to her statements, the project excluded footage, names, and timelines that could have significantly altered public understanding of long-standing industry power dynamics. She argues that what remained was a carefully controlled narrative, rather than a full exposure of events. The claim suggests the final release softened key details while positioning itself as a definitive reckoning. Recent commentary indicates the controversy intensified as Wright began naming individuals and referencing archived material allegedly rejected during post-production. She asserts that the decision to exclude this content was not based on credibility issues, but rather on its potential to implicate powerful figures beyond the central subject.
About that, look at what happened from that. See, and this is why this documentary is I'm not calling it a documentary, I'm calling it a mockumentary. That's what I call it.
That's Spinal Tap.
I call it a mockumentary. I feel like this whole thing is mocking me. That's how I feel. It's wild. But go ahead.
Was there anything at all that you were watching this documentary that was new information to you?
New?
Yes.
No.
From the history of Puff, him coming up, anything new?
No. There was nothing new for me. There was nothing new for me. The only thing that was new was what was coming forward that had never come forward before. Kirk Burroughs finally admitting out loud that he had been essayed by Diddy.
These claims emerged as public attention focused heavily on what was shown rather than what was omitted, allowing deeper issues to remain unaddressed. The documentary itself was reportedly in development for nearly 2 years and presented a sweeping timeline covering early life, business expansion, cultural influence, and legal downfall. Viewers were shown rare legal consultations, insider testimonies, and even post-trial reflections from jurors, an uncommon level of access by industry standards. However, Wright argues that this level of access was selective, emphasizing spectacle while limiting accountability for others who allegedly played critical roles behind the scenes. Additional disputes arose involving contributors who were removed entirely.
Yeah, he was there for so much of it. Because right after the Diddler beat the crap out of Steve Stout, the Jigga Man poked up on Rivera. Not long after that. All of this stuff happened around the same time.
Why do you think Jay-Z wasn't involved in none of this?
Well, I mean, he was involved in a lot of it. You mean why wasn't he mentioned?
Yeah, mentioned in the documentary at all.
I mean, there was a lot of people that weren't mentioned. Matter of fact, not too many people in the industry were mentioned who were there and present. Isn't that cute?
Very true.
They found a way to tell that story while they kept everybody else clean.
Former associates expected to appear reportedly exited the project following disagreements over compensation and editorial direction. Wright claims similar issues affected her participation, stating that her material was deemed excessively controversial. This decision has fueled speculation about the documentary's true purpose and whether financial or reputational considerations influenced editorial choices. Attention has also been drawn to the absence or minimal inclusion of several influential industry figures. Wright points out that individuals with documented proximity to key events were either briefly mentioned or excluded altogether, despite their historical involvement. She highlights majority stakeholders and long-term collaborators whose limited presence raises questions about narrative balance. According to her assessment,
the worst celebrity like that you've been around is like the most full of sin. I know no sin is greater, but like just was like, damn, this
Clive Davis. Devil incarnate. Clive Davis. He Janis Joplin. He blackmailed Betty Wright so she wouldn't tell anybody that he Janis Joplin. He killed Whitney Houston.
The documentary presented a narrowed story that preserved certain reputations while focusing blame in a controlled direction. These allegations have reframed public discussion, shifting focus from the content shown to the motivations behind what was withheld. Wright maintains that the project functions less as a full exposé and more as a curated presentation, leaving critical connections unexplored. As debate continues, the controversy underscores broader concerns about selective storytelling within high-profile media investigations. More revelations surfaced, deepening questions, widening gaps, exposing motives globally. In a 4-part documentary series spanning several hours, one of the most powerful executives connected to the story reportedly appears for roughly 35 seconds.
That was interesting to watch, you don't think? Kalima's testimony? She was probably the most pitiful witness they brought up to speak about all of this in the entire thing. Kalima?
Wait, why you say that? She was emotional. She was
emotional? That's what you call it?
That's what I'm trying to call it.
Capricorn Clark was emotional. I'll give her emotion. I'm sitting there looking at someone, in my opinion, who appears to be struggling with a substance issue, trying not to fall apart on camera. Meanwhile, nobody paying attention to the fact that she's sitting there afraid to really say anything at all because she's in the middle of a custody battle,
raising serious questions about narrative priorities. Jaguar Wright publicly highlighted this imbalance, arguing that such minimal screen time contradicts the project's stated goal of accountability. She emphasized that influence at the executive level shaped outcomes far beyond what viewers were shown. Yet those connections remained largely unexplored on screen.
What are your thoughts as far as how they portrayed Kim Porter with this Reckoning documentary?
They didn't portray her at all.
Yeah, they didn't.
That's the thing. They didn't portray her at all. She was spoken for by Kalima. That was interesting to watch, you don't think? Kalima's testimony? She was probably the most pitiful witness they brought up to speak about all of this in the entire thing. Kalima?
Wait, why you say that? She was emotional. She was
emotional? That's what you call it?
That's what I'm trying to call it.
Capricorn Clark was emotional. I'll give her emotion. I'm sitting there looking at someone, in my opinion, who appears to be struggling with a substance issue, trying not to fall apart on camera. Meanwhile, nobody paying attention to the fact that she's sitting there afraid to really say anything at all because she's in the middle of a custody battle and she's trying to get her kids back. And she's got to be careful of whatever she says because it could make it impossible for her to get her kids back. Did nobody pay attention to that?
Yeah, no, she said she wanted $5,000 from Diddy.
She wanted $5,000 from her former bandmate and a billionaire. And he wouldn't even give her $5,000 to help her get her kids back? Why not? But then again, nobody's talking about who her husband is and who her husband is to Diddy. He's one of Diddy's #1 minions.
Oh yeah, no, that's news.
He's a loyalist. He is a Diddy doo-wop-bop. Kalina's also bisexual, so I'm finding it kind of interesting that she didn't see anything, she wasn't around anything, she didn't know about anything, and this is not me putting anything crazy on her. This is exactly what she said when she was on Love and Hip Hop Atlanta with Stevie J, who was also not mentioned at all during this documentary. because Stevie J was living at the Star Island house. Tell me something. How do you have all of that stuff about Little Rod and there's no Stevie J? Now, it was really interesting because there was some of the footage that Little Rod has shared with this documentary that he shared with nobody else that he did an interview with, and none of that made it into the trial. There's images of him with French Montana and the Diddler on the yacht. Yeah. But nothing of Stevie J. Surgically removed.
When asked publicly about the most troubling industry figure encountered, Wright did not hesitate before naming Clive Davis, labeling him as the most dangerous presence she had witnessed. She went further, alleging long-standing abuse of power and connecting him to multiple historical tragedies within the music industry, including Janis Joplin and Whitney Houston. These are allegations presented as her claims, not adjudicated findings. Yet their severity contrasts sharply with the limited attention he received in the documentary. According to Wright, addressing Davis directly would require exposing the broader power structure surrounding Bad Boy Records and its financial control. That structure, she argues, extends beyond one individual and implicates systems that benefited from silence. The documentary, in her view, avoided that deeper examination, opting instead for a narrower focus that preserved institutional reputations. Another major concern raised involved Kim Porter, whose role was described as critically underrepresented.
Documentary, they left a whole lot of key things out. If they was going to do something and they're going to say in the reckoning of Sean Combs, the reckoning, or Diddy, the reckoning and stuff like that, it should have been a lot of people that we lost because of him. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't only Big, it wasn't only Tupac, you understand? For the atmosphere that he put those kids in. You got a guy named Anthony Wolf Jones, who was from Bad Boy, from its conception as doing security and being one of the financiers of Puff having to have some money to keep Big and Craig Mack around before he got to Clive Davis.
Porter, a central figure connected personally and professionally, was largely spoken about by others rather than represented directly. Wright criticized this approach, suggesting it removed context and agency from someone whose perspective could have reshaped the narrative. Particular attention was directed at testimony from a former artist who appeared emotional on camera.
You want to know why there is no vindication for me? Because for 4 years, I've been screaming, not just Diddy, but Diddy and Jay-Z are monsters. And the victim-making machine kept going on.
Jay-Z has been notable by his silence since these charges were brought against Diddy. Why do you think that is?
Because that's what he does. He starts little fires everywhere, forces everyone involved to go and carry water while he sneaks away out a response that change is now shown.
Wright argued this emotion reflected constraint rather than openness, noting that ongoing custody proceedings may have limited what could be safely said publicly. She suggested that fear of legal consequences shaped the testimony, resulting in guarded statements rather than full disclosure. Wright further noted connections between that witness and individuals deeply embedded in the same inner circle, complicating expectations of transparency. She also questioned the absence of Stevie J, despite documented proximity to key locations and timelines discussed elsewhere in the film. According to her assessment, selective omission created a distorted picture, emphasizing certain figures while carefully removing others. Taken together, these points fueled broader criticism that the documentary presented a controlled narrative.
Trying to get to Bieber for a minute, and his management was backing him off. But it wasn't until Usher took over management and had guardianship and gave temporary guardianship to the Diddler for 48 hours. Think about that. He had already been to the hospital. That situation that Gene was talking about. And you still took Bieber there. But you got custody of him first.
Wright maintains that the omissions were not accidental, but strategic, designed to limit how far accountability could realistically extend. These unresolved gaps continue intensifying scrutiny and public debate today worldwide. Despite denying any suspicious activity, Kima Raynor maintained that nothing unusual was witnessed during that period. At the same time, Stevie J, who was reportedly living inside the Star Island residence during key events, does not appear in the documentary at all. There is no mention, no context, and no explanation offered. That omission appears deliberate rather than accidental, reflecting a clear editorial decision. Attention then shifts to Gene Deal, whose account provides critical insight into behind-the-scenes conflicts surrounding the production. Deal served for years as Sean Combs' longtime bodyguard, present for private gatherings, business negotiations, and street-level operations.
It's trying to take down Diddy.
No, he's trying to move Diddy and Jay-Z out the way so he can run it. And the truth is, I ain't mad at him. I just don't trust him. Because the truth is, he would just be another kind of monster in another kind of way. He don't want things to change. He just want to be the one that's running it. See? Easiest thing to do is to take your enemy's feet and hold them to the fire for things you know that they won't admit. Which is why when that C&D came out, he took all of that Diddy shit down. Because of his tape. Say, what is it with all of these pretenders? And now they got an even bigger one named Curtis Jackson.
His inclusion was originally expected to be substantial. According to Deal, 50 Cent personally reached out to discuss participation. However, complications arose after a direct conversation with director Alex Stapleton. Deal stated that the discussion turned tense when compensation and editorial authority were addressed. He claimed Stapleton emphasized that 50 Cent did not control final content decisions or payment structures. Feeling that the proposed financial terms did not reflect the value of his footage or first-hand knowledge, Deal chose to withdraw. From his perspective, participation without fair representation would have diminished the credibility of his experience.
Ever been to a P. Diddy party?
Yeah, several, many, honestly.
And so, can you take us through, like, what goes on, like, when you were there?
Money
Right.
and sex.
Were you surprised that there were so many cameras in his houses?
No!
So let me ask you, when you hear that Cassie was told to hire male escorts to come in what they call freak-offs now,
Yeah.
is that something normal that happens in Hollywood?
Yeah.
Freak-offs.
Yeah. Everybody know that. I've been saying it.
So why does Puffy, why now? Why?
Because he's the acceptable monster at this time. Like R. Kelly was the last time I sat on this couch.
Deal later criticized the finished documentary for excluding numerous critical figures and incidents. He highlighted the absence of discussion surrounding Anthony Wolfe Jones, an early bad boy security figure who was later murdered. According to Deal, Jones played a foundational role during the label's formative years, including providing financial and security support before executive backing from Clive Davis. These omissions, Deal argued, strip necessary historical context from the narrative. The larger implication, according to multiple critics, is that these stories were not excluded due to lack of information. Instead, including them would have exposed deeper networks and raised uncomfortable questions involving powerful individuals. This leads into broader concerns about selective storytelling and institutional protection within the industry. Further controversy resurfaced following comments made publicly by Jaguar Wright, who previously accused Jay-Z and Sean Combs of long-term misconduct during a televised interview. That segment, aired on Piers Morgan's program, circulated widely before being removed within 24 hours. The rapid takedown fueled speculation regarding external influence and media control. The chapter concludes with renewed scrutiny around historical allegations involving Justin Bieber and Usher, particularly claims involving temporary guardianship arrangements and access during formative years. These assertions, framed as allegations by Wright and others, continue intensifying debate about power dynamics, silence, and accountability within entertainment industry structures today. As the documentary circulated, another pattern became impossible to ignore. The narrative focused heavily on surface-level controversy while carefully avoiding deeper institutional connections. According to Jaguar Wright, entire timelines were fragmented, with key witnesses either minimized or excluded altogether. She argued that the structure protected industry infrastructure rather than exposing it. That claim gained traction as viewers noticed how often accountability stopped at convenient points. One of the clearest examples involved the treatment of power brokers behind the scenes. Clive Davis, despite holding majority ownership in Bad Boy Records for years, appeared only briefly. The documentary acknowledged his role in passing, without examining decision-making authority or financial leverage. For critics, that omission distorted how control actually functioned during the label's most controversial era. According to Wright, conversations around executive oversight were intentionally diluted. She alleged that production teams avoided exploring how contracts, silence clauses, and career leverage shaped outcomes for artists and associates. This approach reframed systemic behavior as isolated misconduct, reducing institutional accountability. Viewers expecting a full reckoning instead received a narrowed lens. The same selective framing applied to artists who lived or worked inside key locations. The Star Island residence, repeatedly referenced by multiple witnesses over the years, was treated as a backdrop rather than a focal point. Individuals known to have spent extended time there were either unnamed or erased. That choice, critics argue, removed essential connective tissue from the story. Industry insiders have since noted that this pattern aligns with long-standing media practices. Documentaries tied to major platforms often balance exposure with risk mitigation. By limiting the scope, productions avoid legal challenges while maintaining viewer engagement. However, this strategy comes at the cost of truth continuity, leaving audiences with incomplete narratives. As Wright continued releasing commentary online, she emphasized that what was omitted mattered more than what aired. In her view, silence functioned as protection. Each absence reinforced the idea that certain names remain untouchable regardless of evidence or testimony. That realization shifted public discussion away from individual wrongdoing towards structural shielding. This chapter of the story reframed the documentary not as an endpoint, but as a controlled entry point. For many viewers, the unanswered questions now outweigh the footage shown. The focus has moved from scandal to system, from spectacle to sustained influence, and from personalities to power. Following the backlash, attention turned to the reactions of those notably quiet. Jay-Z maintained public silence despite repeated mentions across interviews and social platforms. That absence became a story of its own. In an industry where responses are often immediate, restraint signaled calculation rather than detachment. Observers noted that silence has historically functioned as strategy. By avoiding direct engagement, influential figures allow controversy to exhaust itself while maintaining plausible distance. This tactic has proven effective in past industry crises, where momentum fades without confrontation. According to commentators, the same approach appears to be unfolding again. Meanwhile, 50 Cent continued promoting the documentary as a necessary exposure while deflecting responsibility for editorial omissions. Public statements emphasized platform limitations and creative independence. However, critics argue that executive producers rarely lack influence, especially when personal branding is involved. Behind the scenes, conversations reportedly intensified among journalists, independent creators, and former insiders. Several have suggested that alternative projects are already in development, aiming to cover what mainstream platforms avoided. These efforts rely less on corporate backing and more on direct testimony, archived footage, and decentralized distribution. The removal of the Piers Morgan uncensored segment featuring Wright remains a key flashpoint. Media analysts point out that rapid takedowns usually involve legal pressure or reputational risk. Regardless of the reason, the incident reinforced perceptions of narrative control and selective visibility. Public sentiment has shifted as well. Audiences are increasingly skeptical of polished exposés that promise truth while delivering restraint. Social media discussions now emphasize patterns rather than personalities, questioning how many stories remain suppressed due to power alignment. This skepticism has widened the gap between official releases and grassroots investigations. Looking forward, the situation appears far from settled. As more individuals speak independently, pressure mounts on traditional platforms to address gaps or risk irrelevance. The conversation has evolved beyond one documentary into a broader examination of how stories are shaped, sold, and softened. What began as a streaming event has become a catalyst. The silence, the omissions, and the delayed reactions are now part of the narrative themselves. And as attention shifts toward independent disclosures, the next phase may unfold outside controlled environments, where editing choices no longer dictate visibility.